Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to go through the best campaign Pesto Comics has ever had, and that's for Naked Kaiju Woman number 2. If you want to see all the information about the followers that we got, the backers that actually back the campaign, and all of the funding information, just stick around. We're going to go through all of it piece by piece. It's going to be a little bit of a longer post today, but if you're familiar with what we've done in the past, you know exactly what's coming. But if you're new to this, just know that every time we do a campaign, we do this post-mortem. We go through all of it together. So I'm happy to have you here. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Pesto Comics. This is the entry for November 26th, 2025. Post-mortem, Naked Kaiju Woman number 2. As I mentioned, we do this every time, and where I actually got this whole post-mortem idea from is a little program called Comics Launch. So if you're not familiar, Tyler James has a program that will teach you all the ins and outs of everything to do with launching comics, specifically on Kickstarter. I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of people through there, including my Instant Ink comic book podcast co-host, Roberto Villacava. So it's a great program, not just for the lessons that you get, but for the community that's built in as well. So I highly recommend checking it out if you get the chance. And in doing so, you're actually encouraged to do these kind of postmortems as well. You don't necessarily need to share them to the world as I do, but it's good for your own information, and you'll see why if you come through the whole thing with us. So before we really get into it, I have a couple big things to talk about. One of which is a live campaign going right now. That's for Big Smoke Pulp Volume 2. It's available live on Kickstarter. It's already funded. It funded in 7 minutes. If you saw the post last week, I went through everything that is available in the campaign, but I won't bore that with you now. But just know that there are lots of choices and lots of things that you can get. But most importantly, if you're watching this before the end of the weekend, we have Black Friday deals that are available that you can get the digital copies of these books for just a little bit cheaper than you would after Black Friday. The other thing that I mentioned to backers of Naked Kaiju Woman number 2 when I told them about Big Smoke Pulp Volume 2 is that the pre-launch page for Naked Kaiju Woman number 3 is live right now. So if you want to follow when the next issue of Naked Kaiju Woman comes out, if you missed the first 2 and you want to get the catch-ups that are available, definitely follow the pre-launch page. You'll know exactly when it launches and hopefully even outdo what we've done with this campaign. So pre-launch is live now. You can find that at bit.ly/NKW3. Again, bit.ly/NKW3. Go ahead and follow it, and you'll be sure that you won't miss it on launch day. When is launch day? That's a little bit more up in the air. I've received about half the book from Raphael right now, so we're slowly getting to a completed volume of issue 3. We're just not quite there yet. So once we're a lot closer, I always like to make sure that the book is as close to done as possible before we ever even set a launch date. So we're not quite there yet, but if I'm guessing, I'm going to say it's probably coming out around the spring. Right now, I have it slotted in for around April, but that is very much subject to change as we're waiting for pages. We don't know how long this whole process is going to take. I have a good estimate based on how the first 2 went. So until we know that we're ready to deliver the book, I don't want to set a date for the campaign launch. But if you follow it now, it doesn't cost you anything and you'll know exactly when that'll be. Now, with all that said, let's take a look back at Naked Kaiju Woman number 2. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the funding. So when we look at the funds raised for Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, it clearly blows everything else that we've ever done way out of the water. This edition of Naked Kaiju Woman did so well that on day 1, we had already surpassed what we did in 3 days with Naked Kaiju Woman number 1. So Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, totally different stratosphere of funding. A lot of that has to do with folks picking up both issues 1 and 2. So a lot of people who missed the campaign were paying effectively double, and we were getting double the funding with every backer. So we were seeing the rate of growth a lot faster, a lot higher with the funds raised. So you can see I'm very happy with how this all went. And a very interesting tidbit is that day 1 of Naked Kaiju Woman number 2 outpaced every single entire campaign that we've done. So in one day with Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, we raised more than we have raised on any non-Naked Kaiju Woman campaign through its entire run. The next closest one we had was from Parts Unknown number 4, which was a double issue. The price was a little higher, and it just barely fell under what we did on day 1 of NKW2. So very excited with how this all went. I was very happy I hit launch. I was a little worried that, maybe people wouldn't come back or there wasn't as much excitement, but clearly I was proven wrong very quickly as we had a lot of backers even on day 1, and that just continued all the way through. And that continues to be very clear when you look at the total dollar amount per campaign. You can see Naked Kaiju Woman 2 just blows everything out of the water. Even Naked Kaiju Woman 1, like it did very, very well. Just speaking of how far it had gone. The goal was just $1,000. The goals at this point don't really mean much. They're just the number that it's set to. In a lot of cases, it's still exciting to just see how quickly we can hit that number. And I think keeping it consistent at just 1,000 is a good metric to just see how quickly we can fund things. With From Parts Unknown number 2, we upped that goal a little bit, and it seemed to take away some of the juice of just like an excuse to celebrate. So even with Big Smoke Pulp Volume 2, seeing how quick we got to $1,000 just gives you a good sense of the day one support and the excitement behind a project. It doesn't necessarily mean anything in terms of the grander scale of funding. The $1,000 is a number picked out of the blue. It's a round number. And again, it's all Canadian dollars too. So it ends up being like 7 something in American dollars. So whatever country you're looking at, it's going to do that conversion live. So even that round number of $1,000 doesn't really mean much. Really, there's the true numbers that I share with paid subscribers behind the paywall of what is really needed to make these things profitable. So that's really a number I'm chasing in the background. With From Parts Unknown, with Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, I can tell you, I'll spill the beans right now. This is one of the few profitable campaigns. Naked Kaiju Woman number 1, Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, profitable out of the gate. The Kickstarter made it that all of the costs were covered, all the printing costs and all that. There was a bit of a caveat with Naked Kaiju Woman number 1, where we ran into some tariff trouble. That was like right at that period where it was still all very unclear. So a lot of the shipping companies were just charging for the sake of it, not knowing that they would have to pay tariffs or not. So they put that burden on the people shipping, myself. So that ended up being a bit of an issue and put that campaign even into an unprofitable state. But with Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, so far, none of those problems have arisen. We haven't received the prints yet, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen with shipping, but I've gotten my estimates and all that from our shipping company, and I could say it is profitable. And when you look at this chart, you can see really what it takes to be profitable. So it's not something that I take lightly. Comics are expensive. Shipping is expensive. Printing is expensive. So keep that all in mind if you're launching your own campaigns. But with Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, I can very happily say we are good. We're in the clear. So how did that happen? What were people pledging that made it so successful? Well, the most popular pledges were not very surprising, especially when we get into the backer breakdowns later on. You're going to see exactly why that's the case. But number 1, digital catch-up. So that means a lot of new backers, a lot of people who weren't here for number 1, catching up, getting 1 and 2. The second most popular pledge level was just the digital copy. So those folks who had already read number 1 and picking up number 2 makes a lot of sense. You save on shipping. Maybe if you just don't want a bunch of comics around, totally get it. Very happy to have the support with these digital tiers. And then, of course, number 3. So again, a lot of new backers. So a lot of backers picking up number 1 and number 2. It actually outpaced the people who were just coming back from number 1. So very happy to have all these new people on board. So now the highest funding pledge levels. Also, unsurprisingly, if number 3 was one of the most popular, then of course it's going to be the highest funding. And that is because the cost of shipping is included in the pledge level when it's counted. So that's obviously just going to make, even though the prices are relatively close when you're talking about a print copy and a digital copy, that shipping really takes it over the top and makes that the highest funding pledge level. Now, the digital catch-up, again, because we had so many new backers, the digital catch-up came in at number 2. So even though there wasn't shipping and there wasn't that extra boost that you get with the extra cost included, it still ended up being one of the higher funding pledge levels. And then, of course, number 3 was the main cover, which is, again, unsurprising. Everybody grabs the main cover primarily. Same thing as the catch-up bundle. It adds that shipping cost. And, of course, the main cover is usually the one that most people grab. So not surprised to see it as number 3 on the most popular pledge levels. Now we'll look at the funding stats. So we had a total of 754 backers. That's an average pledge of $627 per day, which is absolutely nuts. So we went 2,013% over the goal. Again, the goal is kind of arbitrary. It's $1,000. So the math is also very easy. Move the decimal point. But the big point here, the big thing that I really thought was interesting was the amount of late pledges that we received. We received just over $3,000, $3,149 in late pledges. Those are people that didn't see the campaign when it was live and still decided to back after the fact. I make it very clear on the campaign page that there is a bit of a fee for doing a late pledge. You're not getting it at the best price, and that didn't seem to stop people. So Very happy to see the support. Even though they missed the campaign, they still wanted it bad enough to back it as a late pledge. So the late pledges were the most that I have ever seen, but this whole campaign is the most that I've ever seen. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So when we talk about the average pledged, this is where Naked Kaiju Woman ends up being a little more average. So with the giant backer count, it makes all those other numbers a lot bigger. But when you're looking at how much each person is pledging, it's about the same as most other campaigns. The two outliers still remain as Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1 and From Parts Unknown Number 4. Big Smoke Pulp being a much higher ticket price, being a large anthology of 40 some short stories, and being a big heavy book. And again, shipping is included, and shipping was pretty expensive given how heavy the book was. And with From Parts Unknown Number 4, it was a double issue. So that ended up bringing up the ticket cost a little more just to get that book. Even if you were just getting a main cover or even a digital copy, we upped the cost a little bit to try to cover those expenses. So I'm not surprised to see the average pledged higher on those campaigns, where Naked Kaiju Woman 2 was pretty similar to Naked Kaiju Woman 1. The average pledge was just a little bit higher because of those people getting the catch-up tiers. But in terms of the cost of making it and all that, it was pretty in line with everything else, and therefore the costs that are passed on to the backers was pretty similar. So the average pledge, pretty average. Now we talk about the cost split. I did mention I don't have the prints yet. They're due early December, so I'll be shipping all of that then. However, I've done my estimates. I've put it all into my shipping system with some basic weights based on how much Naked Kaiju Woman number 1 weighed, and using that to get all my shipping label estimates and all that. And with that, I can say that shipping is going to be a quarter of the costs that we've put in. Now, with the ads, I did a handful on Meta and all that, and I don't know if that's what led to the influx of new backers. The referral data and all that just didn't make much sense of what I received this time, so I didn't even include it in this postmortem because I can't make heads or tails of it. So I can't even say if the ads did anything or were a big success or a failure and all that, which is kind of disappointing. Even with the Metapixel and all that, you think I would have a better sense of how well the ads are doing, but I can't rely on the data that we're receiving. So I just know what I spent, and what I spent was just about 3% of the total cost of putting this whole campaign together. The printing cost about 18%. I was able to talk that down a bit. Part of what made this a little bit higher is that we had so many people buying issues of Naked Kaiju Woman number 1 that the main cover of that book actually had to go to reprints, and I had to go and get some new ones because I didn't want to overdo it and get a very huge amount like I did the first time out and just be saddled with all these number 1s. I made the order just a bit smaller than I did the first time out, and that made the per issue cost a little bit higher. So arguably, knowing that there's at least 3 more issues of this book coming out, I probably should have got more number 1s and kept that cost down, but I just didn't want to risk it. I already have many boxes of backlist issues sitting in storage, and I don't want to add to that unnecessarily. And that made the per issue a little bit higher, but it's still only 18%. Of course, the biggest cost, production. So what does production mean? That means paying Raphael for the inks and paying JP for the colors. I do the lettering myself, very happy to do it. It's not something I'm doing just to save costs, but I actually prefer it. I like having my hands in on that. I like knowing exactly how it's going to look and how it's going to flow. I love the art of lettering, so I have a lot of fun doing that. So I'm always going to be doing that, really. And I do enjoy doing it. So all that said, lettering is not a cost. It's just coloring and line art and that business. And then, of course, there's variant covers. I went with 2 variant covers this time, both from Ricardo, who, FYI, we're working on a project together, which should be really fun. And then, of course, there is another cover from an artist that I've been following for a while. We had him on the Instant Ink. It's James Edward Clark. He has a book from Mad Cave coming out that I can't remember the title, just know that it's Hippopotamus's Uncle Kane. I'm going to put it up here so you can see it. You definitely need to check it out. That's coming out in February from James and Fearless Fred Kennedy. So Fearless Fred from Q107, but he's been into comics for a while. He did Dead Romans with Image. So great comic book writer as well. So this book is going to be a ton of fun. Highly recommend you check that out. Add that to your pull lists if you're out in the shops in February. But all that said, back to the main point. Costs went up a little bit with the variant covers, but primarily it's Raphael and JP getting paid here. And fortunately, it's not out of pocket thanks to you guys supporting this campaign so well. So when I talk about you guys, who am I talking about? I'm talking about the backers. What you can see here is there was actually a time where Naked Kaiju Woman number 1 just about outpaced number 2. There's 2 big differences here. NKW number 1 was a 23-day campaign, so it ended kind of short. And that's really what caused the spike where it overtook it. It's that email that comes out and says you have 48 hours left. You have 8 hours left. There's always a spike on those days, and there was with Naked Kaiju Woman number 2 as well. So that spike actually made it overtake Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, but Naked Kaiju Woman number 2, being so consistent, ended up just beating it with its own pace at one point. On day 29, I believe it matched it. And then it has its own spike and blows it out of the water. So 754 backers by the time we were done. Again, a ton of late pledges, which was great. Number 2, our most backed campaign thus far. And very similar to what we were doing with the funding, you can see that day 1 of NKW2 did better than almost any of the campaigns that we had coming before. There's one exception. Crazy Latte thing called Love actually did well. It was a 28-day campaign, and it just about beat how many backers we had on day 1 of NKW2, but by day 2 it was gone. It was blown out of the water again. And yeah, and it was the same backer count that we had 3 days into Naked Kaiju Woman number 1. So this campaign really shot off like a rocket from the beginning and just never looked back. Very happy with how this campaign went, obviously. Let's get into the specifics. Let's get into the backer counts. And of course here, you can see there's 2 outliers. Naked Kaiju Woman 1, Naked Kaiju Woman 2. And 1 was very interesting because it brought a whole bunch of new backers into the fold. People who've never known anything about Pesto Comics or anything I'm doing, they all joined the campaign there. With Naked Kaiju Woman 2, it looks like we got many of them back, which was wonderful. So we had a lot of returning backers. It wasn't quite 50-50, but it was pretty damn close. And you can see that based on the chart here. And what was interesting was we still got a whole bunch of new backers in. So it's wonderful to see that this project gets so many people in the door, which is really what we want. Because I always say Naked Kaiju Woman was built for Kickstarter. It was meant for the audiences and for what they're looking for here. It's my take on the genre of the Kickstarter nudie books. It's not quite the nudie books that you get out there. It's a little bit different. Those of you who have read it are well aware of the tact I've taken with it and kind of what I'm trying to get away with in storytelling and all that. So it's still a lot of fun. I still think it satisfies a lot of those groups and a lot of those people, but it's not your typical like steamy book. But it is a lot of fun, I think, as well. But I also think it's a lot of fun for those of you who want to read it. So hopefully you read it and enjoyed it. And if you're part of the 389 new backers, or if you're part of the 363 that came back, I appreciate every single one of you for being here. So let's talk about how all these people came in. So before we got started with the whole postmortem, I mentioned Naked Kaiju Woman number 3's pre-launch is available, and I stressed how important it is for you to follow that pre-launch. And this here is why. These follower counts, these are people who followed the campaign, either in pre-launch or during the campaign, but they're the people getting the notifications that the campaign is about to end or that it launched or that whatever. And you can see the conversion levels. It's about 30% of the people who ever back the campaign are there because they've been following it at some point. They got a notification, they actually backed it by following the campaign and knowing what's happening with it. So very important to build your followers. I always mention pre-launch is almost as important as the campaign itself. And yeah, so it's a big deal, getting people in the tent and getting them following early and often. That's 358 people out of a total of 729. So that's about half the people who followed the campaign actually ended up backing it. So that's a huge, huge number. Very happy to see that. And again, I've been stressing pre-launch. And the reason pre-launch is important is because of what you see here. The amount of converted backers that you get in pre-launch completely outnumbers the amount of backers you get from post-launch. So people who see the full campaign and for whatever reason don't decide to back it, those people don't come back nearly as often. I'm one of them as well. I usually follow every campaign that looks interesting to me, and I don't always back them because if I just don't have the funds or I just don't have the feeling that I must back it right away. So I end up following it, and maybe I see those emails, maybe I back it last minute, maybe I don't. Maybe I just don't have the funds by the end of the month. So it's a little less likely that I'm going to back something if I had the opportunity to and chose not to. Where if I'm following something in pre-launch, it's because I want to know when it launches because I want to back it. I know that I'm interested in this well ahead of time. And you can see that with the followers here. Out of 123 followers, 106 ended up backing the campaign. That's an extraordinary amount. That's 86% of the people who backed. And it was consistent with From Parts Unknown number 2. That was only about 67%. But still, it was people who followed in advance and then ended up following through once the campaign launched. So very important to collect these backers beforehand. again, you can see here at the end of the campaign, we had a ton of followers, 576, and only 165 of those that weren't following but from before the campaign ended up backing, right? So closer to 29%. So just a little less impressive, much bigger numbers to deal with. So of course the percentages are going to be kind of out of whack, 106, not as much as 165, of course, but just in terms of the intent of the people clicking that button, the ones who do it pre-campaign, much more likely to buy than those who do it after. Now talking about people who have intent, returning backers. Now this is a very weird chart this time out, and much like all the other charts that we've seen, Naked Kaiju Woman ends up blowing everything else out of the water. This time it's very unsurprising because the people who read number 1 came back for number 2, of course. It's good to see that we do have some decent clip of numbers of people coming from other campaigns. So people who've been around for Pesto Comics, they got from Parts Unknown, they got Crazy Latte Thing Called Love, and they came to check out Naked Kaiju Woman. Decent numbers, but the overwhelming majority comes from Naked Kaiju Woman. Unsurprising. And it kind of explains this next chart, which is the multi-return backers. So most of the backers that have returned from previous campaigns have only backed 2. I'm guessing that's Naked Kaiju Woman number 1 and Naked Kaiju Woman number 2. Is it a little bit depressing that they haven't backed everything else in between, from Parts Unknown that we did in between number 1 and 2? Maybe. But I understand that, pro wrestling vampires aren't going to speak to the same people every time that are looking for Naked Kaiju Women. So I totally get that. You would hope that getting all these backers in, they might support everything you're doing, but who knows? Nonetheless, we have a healthy amount of people who have backed many Pesto Comics campaigns from 3 right through to 10. This was the 10th campaign we had done. So 10 out of 10, we still have 5 people who have backed everything that we've ever done, which is incredible. But seeing so many other people who have been sticking around up to, 6 and 7 it means the world. It really does mean a ton. I do appreciate the people who can't afford it and are helping making all of this true. I do appreciate those people who've been here for 10, and I appreciate the people who've been here for 2. It really does. Every backer means the world, but those who have been here thick and thin, regardless of when you joined, maybe you just found us at Crazy Latte Thing Called Love. Maybe you found us at Naked Kaiju Woman 1 if you've been backing everything since. It really does mean the world. It allows us to do some really big things. There's so much more coming in 2026. So I hope that you're here for all of that. It's going to be all very exciting. I'll be announcing more at the end of the year and then even more early in the year. I can't share everything yet, but that's because they're very big things. Some of them are in my control. Some are with some partners that will make things very interesting, but lots of big things coming. And it's thanks to you guys who have been backing however many times you've been backing. But I appreciate everybody who does come back, enjoys what we're doing and offers their support. So thank you all for being here. It means a ton. Now, how you come here is always very interesting. I always see a lot more digital copies of books out there than I do physical. It does change my strategy a little bit in terms of getting comics out there. I know that there's a lot of popularity with tools like Global Comics, where you can get digital comics out to backers, where you can get digital comics out to readers at a very, very low cost. Now, I don't know if you've heard my rants on that before, but as much as I love the idea, and I love it as a reader, this is the thing, I'm a huge hypocrite. I'm a subscriber to Global Comics. I use it to read all kinds of Image and Mad Cave and all that stuff. But as an indie creator, although I have a decent backlog here, you can see all the books I've put out in the past, it does not make it sustainable. I would not be able to do any of this, and you can see why. I would be giving up on over 1,100 sales if I were to just throw it all up on Global Comics and tell everyone go get a gold subscription and follow me that way. We get 3 to 5 cents every read. That's not that much. So I would be done. This would be it if we opted for that model. There are some tools that are focusing more on like an a la carte model, and that's probably something I'll be looking into for post-campaign digital launches and stuff, making it just a little different than what you would get otherwise. But anyways, we'll be talking about all that cool stuff that'll be coming out later. But for now, let's focus on Kickstarter. So digital, always going to be DRM free. The best way to get your digital comics from Pesto Comics is going to be via Kickstarter. So I really appreciate the over 1,100 comics that we shipped out this way. It does help too, because, when you're talking about 1,100 plus comics being sent out, doing it digitally very easy. Here's the link, download it, right? We do it all through Backerkit, made it very easy for everybody to get comics in their hands to read. If I had to ship all of those individual comics, even if it was only to so many backers, but everybody's ordering a ton, shipping costs go up, print costs go up. So it makes it easier to make sure that everybody gets to read it without necessarily upping the cost for myself and for a backer. That said, the amount of physical items that we are sending out just under 1,000 physical comics. That is absolutely astounding. It's going to be 400 and some packages. So everybody got, again, a lot of cover catch-ups. So we're doing 1 and 2. A lot of people picked up the Pesto pack and got all kinds of comics with all kinds of variants and back issues and all that stuff. So that's really cool to see too. But yeah, lots of physical comics going to be packed this December. I will be spending December doing packing. I'm ready for it. I'm excited. I'm probably going to pre-record a lot of these for that reason.
So that was a comparison of the units that we'll be sending out, like how many comics are being sent out, which is a bit misleading because really what you should be looking at is the backers and what they'll be getting. And that's what you can see here. So when you're looking at the backers, digital versus physical, it's almost a 50-50 split. You can see there's a little bit of a bend towards the physical backers, but we're almost at a half-half at this point, where half of the people that are backing the campaign are getting some kind of digital only reward and the other half are getting something physical. I'm kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other in terms of preference of who's backing what. The way that I charge for the physical books, I'm not making much of a profit anyway when you factor in shipping and printing. So digital is good in a way because I send the file and that's done. So digital goes a much further way in terms of covering the cost of production, where physical does help the overall number of funded and that. So although I'm technically making less every time you buy a physical comic, I'm always kind of happy to have the comic in people's hands and have them like appreciating the book in a way that's a little more tangible. It means they have to find space in their house or in their apartment for the book. So it means that they care just a little bit more than you do with a digital book that's ephemeral. You kind of read it, you move on. But that said, I appreciate anybody that's reading, to be honest. So happy to see backers on both ends. And again, there's advantages to digital, the biggest of which being that digital backers, once the campaign is done, I send you the file and we're kind of done from there, and no extra costs from that point on. So it does help actually fund the production of the book. So it's not about preference at this point. And with Naked Kaiju Woman #2, it didn't have to be because we're almost at 50-50. Now we're talking about the physical backers and I'm talking about shipping and the costs and all that. Where these packages are going really does change the costs of things. You can see that we have backers from all over Europe. We have backers in Australia and New Zealand. We have backers in Asia. So it's really going all over the world, but as usual, very dominated by American backers. And thank you to all of you. Happy Thanksgiving for those of you watching. I do appreciate you guys always supporting. I get most of my backers are in the US. So every time we talk about tariffs or any of those things, it is something that I always have to consider because, as you can see, the overwhelming majority of physical backers are coming from the United States. So it does mean that any kind of change to the laws with customs or anything like that does make things a lot more complicated for me in getting packages to these backers. So you can see here, yeah, just a huge majority there. A lot of Canadians this time out, which is wonderful. I do recognize a lot of the names, which means that it's people that I've met at conventions and I've talked to in person, which is a wonderful feeling. It means that I didn't scare them away. So that's good to see. But almost equaling that is the amount of backers that I have from the UK. Now, I did go to Thought Bubble, but I wouldn't say that most of these sales were coming from those that I met at Thought Bubble. It does seem that the word is just getting around. Again, I like to credit JP Jordan for a lot of that. He does a lot of the hype and the sales on that end of the world. Our colorist is color/salesman, which I really do appreciate that effort that JP always puts in. And whether it's true or not, I do like to credit him for the backers on that side of the world. So I really do appreciate those of you from the UK that have supported this campaign. Now, a thing that's always interesting is to see the types of backers that you're getting. Like how many did you bring in and how many are part of the Kickstarter ecosystem? How many of them back everything they see? They go through the comics page on the discovery side and start clicking and saying, I like this one, I like that one. And how many of those did we catch? It's about 3/4 of the backers are the power backers. Those are the people that, like myself, back a whole bunch of stuff. So I do the same thing. I go through the discovery page. I go, that looks cool. That looks cool. And I'm following so many different creators at this point that I get notifications, usually on Tuesdays. I avoid Tuesdays for that reason. I don't want to be one of a dozen that are hitting people's inboxes. So I wait till Wednesday. Who knows if that's hurting or helping. But I launch on a Wednesday and it allows me to do the newsletter in conjunction with the launch day rather than doing it the day after. So I do find that Wednesdays are a little less crowded. All that said, power backers doesn't seem to matter. They'll find your campaign anyway. And you can see here 3/4 of them are power backers. Only 2% first time backers. So not too many people that we've been able to pull in the Kickstarter here. And then there's a few casual, which does make me think that it's those folks that supported number one, came back for number two, or maybe they're just seeing it from somewhere else. They back the odd thing. And fortunately, you're able to reel them in for this one. And then the core backers are the people that kind of fall in the middle. They're the ones that they back a decent amount of campaigns, but they're not on there regularly backing every week. They back what they like, and very happy to get those folks to really round out that last quarter of backers. Those are people that, you have to really win them over. But if you can, you'll get them on board. So we did get quite a few of those folks as well. Now, where people are backing, if you've seen any of my videos that I did for Word Balloon or Thought Bubble, where I go through setting up a Kickstarter and what's important, one of the biggest things I mention is that you have to think of the mobile experience. The mobile experience for Kickstarter, very different from the desktop. When you're building a campaign, they really gear you to think about the desktop, which makes sense because about 50% of your backers are looking at it just on Kickstarter.com, like on the website. The other half are using the app or using the website on their phone. That's half. That's 50% of the people. And they're getting a completely different experience than those people who are looking on the desktop. So when you're setting up your campaigns, you really do have to think about how it's going to look on a phone. The best advice that I don't always follow myself, is what you should do is set up your campaign and then launch it on your phone and look at it as though you're a backer on your phone and see that everything translates. One of the biggest things that people tend to miss is the way that the rewards show on a phone. You almost have to check out. There isn't a good rewards page like there is on a desktop. So what I do is I typically put it on the story page. I put on that front page a breakdown of all of the rewards you can get, so that I don't force people to basically do a fake checkout and just to see how much things cost or what's included. So I do include that on the story page. So this kind of makes that case as well. Like we're talking almost 50-50 in terms of where people are backing the campaign. They're either doing it on mobile or they're doing it on desktop. It's a coin flip. And that's usually consistent with every campaign. So I do try to keep the mobile backers in mind because a lot of people do prefer to back that way. Now, one of the big tools I use is Backerkit Launch. So if you have ever backed one of my campaigns, you will have received an email saying, hey, I just launched this. You should check it out. Hey, this campaign's ending. And I don't go crazy with the emails. I could send out weekly emails saying, hey, we just hit a stretch goal. You want to join us? I don't want to get spam blocked or anything like that. I also just don't want to annoy people. To be completely honest, when I get too many of those emails, I usually tend to ignore them or unsubscribe at worst if they get really annoying. So I try to keep it to a minimum. It's, hey, we're in pre-launch, we're launching, we've launched. And then the last one is, hey, there's a few hours left. I usually try to get it in between the 48 and the 8 hour. So I'll do it like 24 hours. Hey, there's 24 hours left to back this campaign. And it usually does all right. In this case, it did better than ever. The open rate was a lot lower. Every campaign, I'm adding a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of emails, because what Backerkit does is anybody who's ever backed the campaign gets added to the list. So that list is growing quite a bit. So I'm not surprised that the open rate has dropped a little bit, but we're still at about a third of people who received the email actually bother to open it. And then of those, we had 9% that are actually clicking it and 5% that are actually going through and pledging based on that email. So Backerkit Launch is certainly proving its worth, and it brought in about 15% of the total funding. So definitely made it worthwhile. There is a cost to Backerkit Launch. It's about $100 US. Definitely paid itself off. One thing I will mention, I also used the Backerkit Pledge Manager. In that case, the costs were quite high because of this campaign funding so well. It takes a percentage, and that percentage was much higher. So much so that I am considering to look into what the Kickstarter Pledge Manager is like. I know there's still a lot of challenges with how you manage digital files. I don't love that. But again, maybe it's at the point that we can start using it. I'm not entirely sure, but those costs were a bit high, and I didn't love having to cover those. So for the Pledge Manager, I'm starting to go on the fence, but for Backerkit Launch, I think I'm in. I'll continue to use that for the foreseeable future. And that's all I have for data today. So let's get into the questions. Let's reflect on the campaign. So how do I feel now that the campaign is over? I feel great. I mean, it's the best performing campaign that we've ever had. It's kind of bittersweet in a way, because I wish every campaign would come to these heights. It really does blow the rest of the work that I've done out of the water completely. It stands on its own. Naked Kaiju Woman is easily the most successful series I've ever put together. I'm happy to do it. I have a lot of fun doing it. I'm very happy to do it with Raphael and JP for as long as we can. It's been a lot of fun putting these stories together, and I have a lot more. Right now, we're planned for just 5 issues, but I have stories to go beyond that. But we'll at least have a complete story that we can collect with the first 5 issues. for sure. So we're planning 5. I have more. I also have other stories that I have for Raphael, so I don't want him to just be doing the Kaiju Woman forever. But given how popular this series is, I don't want to let it sit for too long before bringing it back in the future. And like I said, I have stories to last forever. This could be an ongoing series. Like I have enough to keep this going for the foreseeable future. But the original 5 issues, I had a pretty clear arc that I wanted to cover. So it's going to be interesting to see that through. And once you see issue 5 and kind of where we end up, it's going to take some creativity to get it back on track. I think it'll be good. If you've been reading it, it does escalate with each one. And you'll see by the time we get to issue 3 and then issue 4, there's kind of like a point of no return. So it'll take a little bit of sequel magic to get it back for the next series. But nonetheless, my point is I feel great about this campaign. What was the best part or high point? Well, day 1, as you saw with all the numbers, day 1 surpassed everything that we had done with entire campaigns prior to that outside of Naked Kaiju Woman 1. So the fact that on day 1, it just funded as well as it did. I could have never anticipated that. I thought it would do well. I knew it would do well, right? And it would probably get close to what number 1 did. I thought maybe we'd have some people dropping off and it would do worse. That's typically how comics go. You get a lot for number 1 and then some people drop off because they didn't care for it. Here, we fortunately had a lot of new people coming in and then catching up. So those people that we may have lost from issue 1, we were very quick to replace, and a lot of them were there day 1. So it was absolutely wonderful. What was the worst part or low point of the campaign? I have the same answer for this with every campaign, but this time was different. And that's the days that we had cancellations. One thing I will say with this campaign, my goodness, the cancellations. Again, 754 backers that actually stuck around. But the amount of people that would back and then drop out and back and drop out. And I actually ended up putting a post in the Comics Launch group saying, like, what's going on? Like, I had like 4 days where I lost about 30 some people. And Tyler James, the guy who runs the program, kind of said, you're doing really well. And in doing really well, you're going to see everything grow, including the people who back out. So that kind of hurt a bit. I'm not offended by it or anything. It always hurts a bit when you think you're hitting certain heights and then you start to see it scale back. I totally get it. People make a choice and then they think about it after and want to pull back. It's part of the deal with Kickstarter. Until you hit that funded date, none of that money's yours anyway. But, seeing all the red, seeing so-and-so canceled over and over and over, yeah, it doesn't feel great. But people have their own circumstances. I totally get it. Times are tough. When you start looking at what you can cut and you notice that you back the campaign, that maybe you'll just wait to the next one, or who knows what your thought is, those people tend to back out. So it does kind of suck. It feels like a rejection on my end, but could be worse. And again, very happy with the campaign overall. So this is a bit nitpicky to complain about the handful of people who canceled. It was just the amount this time. But again, the highest amount of backers we've ever had by far. So of course, highest amount of cancellations we've had by far too. How are you different now that the campaign is over? This campaign, I won't say that anything changed in terms of like how my outlook and all that. It does kind of solidify that Naked Kaiju Woman is what runs Pesto Comics at this point. It's what makes all of this sustainable. It's the one that is the most profitable. Although our current campaign with Big Smoke Pulp is a close second in that, but that's mostly ticket price. Just in terms of how much the book costs, and we're able to get some like profit out of that with when we're talking about ebooks and all that, just because I'm paying the writers and all that. But artists and printing and all that is a lot more expensive on the comic side than it tends to be on the book side. So the margins are a little bit higher. So Big Smoke Pulp's a close second. But for comics in particular, or just in general, Naked Kaiju Woman, it makes all the money for Pesto Comics. It makes it all doable. It helps pay off some of the losses that we suffered on other campaigns. It didn't change that I thought on that. It just kind of confirmed it. Again, I wasn't sure how this would go. I wasn't sure that number 2 would follow in the footsteps of number 1, or I never thought that it would surpass it the way it did. So now seeing that and knowing that I can rely on Naked Kaiju Woman to a degree to do very well and kind of sustain everything else that we're doing is a new way of planning and thinking about where these campaigns fit in the year and how doing these will offset any of the risks that we may be taking elsewhere. What was the worst part or low point of the campaign? What surprised you most about the campaign? Again, day 1, it follows the high point. It was just the fact that I hit launch and it was incessant. It was just like back. And I saw that with number 1. Like there were a lot of people who were backing number 1. But number 2 was at a pace that I had never seen before on Kickstarter. There's an animation if you stick on the campaign page. So I have 3 screens in my desk setup here. And one of the screens just has the campaign running in the background. And I don't recommend that most of the time, because usually it just stays static. And then once in a while, you get a little animation of the numbers going up. Sometimes the numbers going down. Again, cancellations. You look at it, nothing's happened. But it's fun to see that little animation. With Naked Kaiju Woman #2, it was nonstop. The numbers were just going up, going up. It was a constant thing. So that was surprising. And just how day one was just gangbusters. Like it again, outdid every campaign, like full campaigns that I had done before, funding wise and very close backer wise. So very surprising with the turnout. Even though I made an effort to get people out, I did a lot with meta ads, even in the lead up and getting pre-launch and all that. So not entirely surprised, but definitely surprised to a degree. What's your biggest concern now that the campaign is over? I wouldn't say it's a concern, but I am always thinking about how do I replicate this success with other campaigns without doing Naked Kaiju Woman. It's a big naked lady. Is that the reason people are in alone? I don't think so. I think a lot of people are enjoying the story, enjoying the art, enjoying everything else that makes it a comic. If you're just looking for nudie books, I mean, if you're just looking for nudie books on their own, there's a ton of those on Kickstarter and elsewhere. There's free versions of that. So there's got to be a reason why you're into Naked Kaiju Woman specifically. So trying to find that alchemy and make it repeatable is very interesting and important, but I don't necessarily want it to just be about naked ladies every time. So trying to find out how to do that without being too exploitative. I think in this book, again, if you read issue 1, you know where I'm going with it. You know that I'm trying. I am aware of that concept of just like, I'm not trying to exploit the naked ladies. I am to a degree, like if we're being entirely honest with ourselves, that's how this book works. It's a naked lady on the cover. That's how you're getting in the door. But the story is about how that reflects on society and all that stuff. Without getting too deep, I mean, it's fun. It's a big naked lady punching monsters. But, you know, I do have that in the back of my mind, and that's a theme that carries throughout issue 1 in particular. I'll do them when they're appropriate, of course, right? So how do I replicate this success without relying on naked to sell books? That's what I'm thinking about now that this campaign is over. What worked well? This whole campaign worked well, surprisingly. The variant covers did pretty well. I was very happy to get the variant covers that I did. So it's two people that I'm very into, both Riccardo Ficini, who I've worked with since the beginning. Since Unlimited Udo, he did a variant cover for me, and we're working on a series together, which I will share in the very near future. But we're working on a series together, which I will share with you all in the very near future. Very excited for how that's turning out. And in the last email I sent them, I'm like, dude, we have to work together like in the long run, like for a long time, because I really love how this book is coming out. So hopefully I didn't scare him away and we can work on stuff together for a very long time yet. But those variant covers did well. And then James Edward Clark, again, working on a book of Mad Cave with Fearless Fred right now. And that book, every time they're posting something on Instagram, like James and Fred are posting things on Instagram, it's always something crazier and cooler than the last time. So I knew he would knock that cover out of the park, and he absolutely did. So I was very happy with how that turned out. But that goes, again, with Raphael and what JP are doing as well. Like everybody who worked on this book did something incredible. So I think really what worked well was the team that we got together for this edition was just so much fun and really got it and really added something to the whole thing. Can you do it again? I sure hope so. It's definitely the plan. Naked Kaiju Woman #3 is in pre-launch right now. I mentioned it off the top. So you can follow it today. Again, that's going to be coming sometime in the spring. We haven't set a date quite yet. Raphael sent about 8 or 9 pages to me so far. So pages are coming in. I got them to JP to color, although we're working on that project with Riccardo as well. So that has a little bit of priority at this point while we wait for Raphael to catch up with some more pages. But by the spring, should be good to launch #3. And then, of course, going straight through to #4 and #5. So definitely hope that we can do this again because we plan to. What did backers really seem to resonate with? The catch-up tiers. So that's very clear based on what was backed. So it's those people that didn't read #1 seem to be happy to be able to get a bundle at a slight discount and get either a digital catch-up or a physical catch-up. So very happy to see that so many people have done that. It went really well in that sense. What completely bombed? Nothing really bombed. But one thing I will say, I did screw up. What I normally do is I include a digital Pesto bundle. So it includes everything that we've done from Pesto Comics, every digital comic. Sometimes I include Big Smoke Pulp in there if it's not trapped in KU exclusivity. I forgot to add that tier. This time I clearly made a huge mistake and did not add that tier. So with all the new backers, that would have been a great tier to make available because all those people who got catch-up tiers maybe would have got a little bit of everything. A lot of people did get add-ons in that, so it kind of covered that, and they were picking and choosing the books that looked interesting to them. But it wasn't quite what I intended to do, which was to have all of the books in there for people to read. So could have done better in that sense. So I wouldn't say that I bombed. I bombed before we even got to start, before we even got the opportunity to put it up there to fail. But I think it would have done well, which is why I'm a little disappointed by it. What will you never do again? That's a hard one. Have something that I would never do again. And that is do the surveys while I'm on vacation. So what ended up happening was, for some reason, Backerkit was having a hard time calculating shipping. And it created this weird situation where it was crediting everybody's shipping, which I want to help everyone out. And it would have been great if everybody got free money in their account. But instead, what happened was that means I can't cover anybody's shipping and get packages to them. So some people were really nice and saying, oh, this doesn't look right. Can you fix it? Some people used the credit and tried to get extra books, to which I had to say, actually, I have to correct that. So if you want to get the extra books, you can pay for them, which actually quite a few people did and still added books after the fact. And then, yeah, so it was a big mistake. I thought I had all my ducks in a row. And I wanted to get the survey out to people. So I was letting, there's a couple of people who were commenting saying, hey, is the book ready? Is the book ready? Is the book ready? I was very clear. I wasn't going to do anything till November. And instead, I just let that pressure get to me. And I sent the surveys incomplete and incorrect. And without doing that, usually I do a last check. I'm at my desk set up at home where I'm comfortable. And I do a couple sample surveys to make sure everything's going through. Instead, I was in a hotel in Bologna and I just hit the button. And then chaos ensued, and I ended up spending a good portion of my time in Bologna going through and manually correcting surveys. So what will I never do again? Rush the surveys. I'm going to test them and make sure they work. If that's so, yes, there's my answer. Not necessarily campaign part, post-campaign, but very important because that could have gone so much better. And with 700 plus backers, it was quite a bit of work to correct after the fact. So with that is the postmortem for Naked Kaiju Woman #2. I want to thank you for being here. I know these are always a little bit longer, so I appreciate you sticking it out. But I hope all this data and all this information and even the vibes things that I share with how the campaign went serve you well, whether you're just a backer who's just interested in what all this is, or if you're a creator yourself and you want to see what it takes to put together a successful campaign. I hope this helped. If you do have any questions, that's what the comments are for. So if you're on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're on Substack, you can leave a comment if you're a paid subscriber. Unfortunately, I would love to open up the comments to everybody, but in order to do a paid section, it locks out the comments. So it's a little bit frustrating in that sense. But if you're a paid subscriber, we'll have a little bit extra at the end. I'll give you a little bit of a sense of how Big Smoke Pulp is going this month. And if you're a Substack subscriber, we're just going to talk a little bit. And if you're watching this on Substack, we'll talk a little bit just in general about this whole campaign. But if you're on YouTube, I want to thank you for watching. We'll be back next Wednesday with a new post that I honestly haven't planned yet, but we're going to get there. It'll be something cool. I'll do my best to keep you entertained, but thank you as always for being here. Go check out, make sure you go follow the campaign for Naked Kaiju Woman #3. It's in pre-launch right now. And of course, Big Smoke Pulp live right now. So if you want to get a copy of that, please go check that out, both on Kickstarter. You can find those in the links below. And with that, I want to thank you to the Americans watching. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And to everyone else, have a wonderful weekend. Have a good one. Thank you.